Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 98 of the Home Games Podcast. I'm Yazeed, and this is Joseph.
Hello, I'm Joseph, and today is January the 2nd, 2022. I forgot the day of the week. Sunday. It's Sunday, January 2nd.
It is, and we're in person.
It's our first in person since, I think, October.
It's our first in person of the new year.
Yes. Hopefully we get to do these more consistently in person.
Yeah.
But you never know. The world's crazy.
Yes, it certainly is.
Yeah, so for this episode, we're going to be talking about the work I did over the past couple weeks on the splitting up our Squish library from our Home Games Core package, I guess you would call it. And some of the updates I made to the dashboard. I also put out a video last week with some new dashboard stuff. Right, it was like 2 days ago at this point. Mm-hmm. Anyway, that whole thing. I have some 2022 goals I wanted to talk about, and then Yazeed had an idea for, if I understand it correctly, it's automatically resolving a given feature or API set for Squish to like the best possible version of the library
that doesn't break.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess I'll just start on my stuff. Did you want to talk about like anything else?
No. Let's sandwich it. You do yours, and then I'll go, and then you can finish up.
Okay, we haven't done in person in a while, so I'm like, I don't know what the hell to do. Okay, yeah. So I guess high level, I put up a pull request finally for Home Games Core and for Squish. Squish now includes our Squisher, which was the component that used to live in Home Games Core that would actually call the actual Squish functions, which are just game, whatever, all that stuff. That exists now in the Squish library itself, which makes the most sense because it is literally called the Squisher, which should be in Squish. Mm-hmm. And Home Games Core no longer has that. And in Home Games Core, I have this new view interface, which I use to render the dashboard. So all these things are in two pull requests, one for Home Games Core, one for Squish. They're up. They're ready for review. They're probably full of dog shit. And I look forward to hearing your review of said dog shit.
All right, we'll do. Should I review them in concert, or can I review them one and then the other one? Like basically, when I do my local build, would I have to make sure I have both of them checked out, or do they work independently?
Yeah, so if you were to use just the version of Squish that I put up, your version of Home Games Core would stop working. Mm-hmm. And if you were to just pull in my Home Games Core stuff, you would need that version of Squish. So you kind of need them both if you wanted to test locally, but Home Games Core depends on Squish, so when you review them, Squish should go first, and then once we get that approved, that's the foundation for the Home Games Core changes.
Yeah. Okay, makes sense to me. I'm excited to review them as well.
Yeah, it's a lot of code removal, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
One of the things that one of my old mentors told me was a pull request that removes more code than it adds is generally a good pull request. So they're good by nature of just what they are, but I think it's like 3,000 total lines changed. So you enjoy that, please.
I mean, it's 3,000 total lines changed, but I mean, it's functionally. It's not like they're very specific to like what they're working on, right? So I wasn't just staring off.
No. I hear the Golden Girls song in the background. R.I.P. Betty White.
R.I.P. Betty White. That's right.
That's nobody's watching that in the other room. So.
Yeah. So, I mean, like basically the changes are localized, right, to certain feature sets. They're not like sprawling across the whole thing, right?
Yeah, it's really a few bullet points. One of them, like I said, removing the Squisher from Home Games Core and some of the other kind of hacks that I had in that Squisher. Mm-hmm. So in turn, remove some of the features that we had. Like I think spectators are kind of busted at the moment. Things like that. But essentially, it was ripping out the Squisher, putting it into Squish. So really, that's like a limited copy and paste job. So the lines removed from one, or the lines added to the other. I added this view interface, like I mentioned, which is really just a simple utility that you can use on top of all our existing stuff. It's not really like a net new thing. It's just some new functions that kind of slice into game nodes, really. And the new dashboard. So rewriting the dashboard, kind of made a lot of changes there. Again, removing a lot of hacks. Essentially, the hacks that we had were in the Home Games dashboard code, the Home Games root code, the game session, and Squisher, like I said. So kind of stripping out all of the bullshit from that and transferring it over to what it should be in Squish. And yeah, the dashboard code is probably the only new thing because it's like a rewrite of the dashboard, but it's functionally like the same thing I just showed. You know, it's still just games that you scroll through and click into, and same thing. It's always been that. So yeah, should be simple, I guess. It's just a lot of code.
Yeah. I'm excited. I'm excited to review the code.
Yeah. And I mentioned in the pull request, but like the linting, we can worry about it at a later date. Anything kind of structural, foundational that doesn't make any sense or should be cleaned up or improved, I guess, is what I'm going for here. Because if we kind of go with a fine-tooth comb through 3,000 lines of changes, it'll be a fucking nightmare. You know?
Yeah,
So, yeah, that's basically all I had for the actual pull request stuff. What did you think of the dashboard I showed you?
I think it's really cool. I honestly didn't see a performance difference compared to the old dashboards. That's really good, because I remember when we talked about this last time, you were saying that the new code tends to run a little bit slower, it seemed like, but it didn't seem like it seemed as responsive as it was before, so that's good.
Yeah, I think there's no noticeable difference when you're kind of just scrolling through a few things. I think if you had something a bit more complex that you had the views on, it would be more, because what you get back in each of these kind of queries from a view for the dashboard at the moment is really 4 nodes, right? 2 options on each row, and a scroll bar, which is a static thing, which actually exists outside of a view. So if you were to have hundreds of game nodes returned in a thing and you're querying hundreds or thousands of game nodes, it would be kind of nuts. But yeah, it's not too bad right now. I was going to say something and then I forgot it. Oh, yeah. So the biggest thing is like really that dashboard kind of exists now in memory, as opposed to like having a concept of a game list and then you just run logic to render parts of that game list. You actually kind of pre-render a full list of games, and then when players join, you just slice out pieces and show it to them, which those slicing out, or that slicing out logic, involves copying game nodes and cloning them and giving them back. So that's the expensive part, and I can't see a world where that isn't necessary. We need to clone the thing, because you're not modifying the size and shape of the thing like the original thing. You're just getting a copy of it, basically. So yeah, that'll always be there, but as long as we can make that fast enough, it'll be cool.
Yeah. Do you foresee a problem with rendering the full list when we have like maybe 1,000 games or 2,000 games, 3,000 games? Like, do you think that would be a problem? Like, maybe we do chunk it up at some point, or do you think it'll always be okay?
I think we'll never render the full list. Like, we'll never actually take the full list of games and show it on someone's screen, right? Because that would be essentially like full zoomed out, and you just see a bunch of things that you could never really interact with.
Tiny tiles.
Yeah, so I don't think we'll ever render that many. And I think it will get slower as the base plane to query from is larger, but I don't see it being the thing that fucks us. You know, if anything, other performance stuff will hit us faster than that, I think, but it's just a guess.
Yeah.
I guess.
Okay, yeah, makes sense. I will test that probably.
Yeah,
and let me fake a bunch of games to see what it does.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you could try to like build a new thing on top of it. You could try to like redo Square in views if you wanted to, which I don't think really makes a lot of sense because it's a static image, right? You know, like a static background, whatever. But, yeah, fuck with it and let me know what you think. I think it works from my testing.
Yeah.
And I added some tests, like automated tests for scaling and for all that math stuff. Like, you know, if I take this screen and I render it at a 60% scale or whatever on this thing, like this color should be at this pixel, like that. I tried to do some of that stuff. But it could definitely be improved, all of our testing stuff in general. But the fact that we have tests at all is an improvement.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Did you have anything else you want to talk about for the PR?
For the PR, no. Except, that it's a lot. And once we get that through, the next stuff will be kind of merging it with the TypeScript stuff that you have, right? And kind of going forward from there. And going back to all of our services and making all that stuff work and making sure our automated builds work and all that kind of stuff, which I think will be a pain in the ass because like PKG, the library I use to build those binaries, is kind of particular about like the fanciness that you use in like, for example, the I forget the name of it, but it's like, variable question mark dot property, which will kind of like undefined or whatever null out before it gets. Anyway, that little stuff, like the syntactic nice stuff that's in new versions of Node, don't just kind of work out of the box with PKG. You have to do shit. So hopefully that shit is a small list.
Yeah. Well, when we go to use PKG for that, we would use the like built version. We won't be giving it like the source TypeScript code, right? Would use like the transpiled JavaScript. Yeah,
that's true. So if the TypeScript process there is putting out like old Java, or like compatible with the old shit, it transpiles to an older version, like more compatible version of JavaScript, then then that would be totally fine, because then I just point the dist directory or whatever at PKG and say build this into a binary and give it out. So ideally that would be the case. I haven't really looked into the PKG stuff since I originally set it up, and every time I make a change to home games, I just think that I'm fucking myself over in the future, but I haven't actually checked. So
makes sense. Yeah. I think the TypeScript, you are allowed to pick what it transpiles into, like what version of Node it transpiles into, or JavaScript it transpiles into. So hopefully it should be okay.
Okay. Yeah, I think because I mentioned before where I blew away Node 12 support. Did I tell you that on the podcast? Or
you told me that. I don't know if it was on the podcast.
Okay. Well, either way, we have these automated test pipelines on Home Games Core and Squish. And so when I added this new stuff that I was working on recently that used like private methods and private attributes in Node classes, Node 12 didn't like that, because I don't think that stuff is supported in Node 12. So basically I had to blow away support for Node 12. And we for some reason, we're supporting Node 10 in Squish, or in Home Games Core. So,
are we?
Yeah, we were. Fuck that. So now it's 14 and 16 are the only two supported versions. But ultimately, that doesn't matter for someone who's not a developer, because the binary will just include whatever version of Node in the thing. So.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Yeah.
Easy peasy. Okay. Let me discuss an idea I had. So how familiar are you with the HDMI or USB
the standard
specs? Yeah, the standards.
Not at all.
Okay, good, because they don't make any sense. But the idea actually came to me while I was reading about why they don't make sense. Basically, like, they're a mess, and they will almost always be a mess, just because of the way that they build their specs. But anyway, for this, what I wanted to do or theorize was a way to be like, when you make a game, right, you specify what version of Squish it's supposed to use.
Correct.
Okay. When we go to actually use functions in Squish, we use the version of Squish that was specified, right, to actually like get that utility function, to execute that utility function, and then we return what that function was going to return in that version. So what my idea was when we get that version number, okay, we were like, okay, so like say they want to use, their game was built on version of Squish 1.0, but we have version up to like version 1.5. So we know that they want to use 1.0. They're calling function X. So we look at version 1.1, and we see if version 1.1 tells us that it has the function and it hasn't broken since the previous version. And if that's the case, then we look at version 1.2. Does the version 1.2 have that function, and is it non-breaking to the previous version? If that's the case, we look at 1.3. And we keep going up until we either run out of versions to check, or we hit a version that says, no, I broke versus the previous version. And what that allows us to do, I think, is to, as long as they're non-breaking changes, make performance updates to and things like that, so that games don't have to always like worry about every function. They only need to worry about the broken functions. And we because we have the manifest, we could tell them like, hey, your game up to version like 1.9 or whatever, all of your functions except for ones that call this is going to be broken, or something like that. And so my idea was that's like the purpose, is basically just to give us, if we were ever made performance updates that were non-breaking, it would give us a way of letting all games benefit from those performance updates without necessarily having the developer go in and update what version of Squish it's supposed to use every time. And it allows them to have an asymmetric version of Squish that they can get performance updates until it's a broken change. So say we updated 6 functions in a new version, right? That's a lot of updates in a single version probably for us, but we updated 6 functions. 4 of them are non-breaking, 2 of them are breaking. So the 2 that are broken, they can't get past. They'll just work on their current version, and the 4 that are non-breaking, they'll be allowed to use the whatever performance benefits we gave them. And that way it gives, I don't know, to me it seems like that would give us a little bit more, or that would give developers a little bit easier of a time, because they don't have to go and worry about like, oh shoot, my game performance is falling off and I have to go and like update a bunch of stuff. It's like, nah, not necessarily. Like it'll work up until these things, but these are the functions that you'll have to update if you're gonna up your version of Squish. Thoughts?
Okay, so I guess if we start from the other side of it and kind of when this feature or thing kicks in or when it's taken into consideration, in my head it sounds like during the build process, because if someone is playing a game in home games and they say, or they open home games and they search for Yazeed and they find your game and you're depending on Squish 1.5, then their binary that they already are using would need to have Squish 1.5 in it, or whatever it resolves to in this thing, like the better version of 1.5. So then in the process where I build the binary, it needs to kind of go and say, here's every version of Squish that we support, and then resolve it to something that we can kind of translate to. So then we kind of use whatever people say that they want as a key into this map of, okay, you actually want 1.6 or you actually want 1.9. And so the binary includes 1.6, 1.9, 1. Whatever, but not 1.5, 1.6, 1.7, whatever. I see the value of doing that. I guess something fundamentally rubs me the wrong way of a developer saying, I'm using 1.6. And we're like, yeah, you're using 1.8.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, we had 1.6, but we decided it's better. So fuck what you're using. I'm going to do this. Okay, I guess outside of just like the promise of we have some sort of test spec that can consistently know what's supported and what's not, what's broken and what's not. But there will be a case where some specific of how it worked in an old version is what someone wanted. My pork belly is ready, so I'll be back.
Back from the pork belly.
Okay, back from the pork belly. Fixed the dog. So what I was saying was, if there is a case where someone is using an old version or a specific version of Squish, and say for some reason it's slow, but it works with the game and it just so happens to work that way and it kind of needs a slow version, or else there's like a race condition or something weird, then I don't want to break that for them, and we can't test against that. So we can't consistently do that correctly.
That sucks.
And I think it adds more complexity than it is worth.
You think so? Well, it's more complexity for us. I think the difference would have been complexity for us versus people having to like maintain their game per version of Squish. But I do see your point. I didn't actually think about the possibility for like race cases, because I was hoping no one would code like that. But I realized with an open source project where anyone can use our stuff to make whatever game they want, somewhere inevitably somebody is going to code like that. And they won't listen to this episode where we or they might not even know this episode like this where we talk about that problem specifically.
Yeah, and I mean, like, even outside of a race condition, I don't think we can test every case to know with certainty that you don't want this version. And then if we were to do that, then there's a process of deprecation. And what does that look like when you have backwards compatible games and shit? It's like, if we find a flaw in a version of Squish, like a security flaw, even though it's vanilla JS and like we don't really have dependencies, and it could still be possible that there's a flaw in there.
Yeah.
Then we would need a way to move that off, and maybe for backwards compatibility we do have some sort of alias where we fix the bug and like have a hot release or whatever, like with just that fixed old version, and we can resolve in that specific case to say like, well, they're using the one marked as deprecated, so our build system will swap that out. But like in a general sense, I don't think we should be trying to just upgrade everybody as much as possible. You know,
Yeah.
it's like on paper, the 2019 Corolla is better than the 2016 Corolla, but the 2016 Corolla hits speed bumps the way I like, and you can't test for that. So it's like, give me my 2016 Corolla. You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
I do understand what you mean. I don't know what you mean, but I understand at least.
On paper, it's better.
It's
It's everything, whatever. But the feel isn't right, and you can't account for feel because if you know what I'm saying. But I do think it's an interesting idea, and I do think we can use it like for deprecated or whatever versions, but not across the board.
Okay.
Yeah,
and that was my idea. It came to me after reading about what the HDMI spec was like, and I was like, "This is a nightmare. There has to be a better way to do this."
Yeah, there's like
better way to do it.
12 different versions of like the 2.1 standard or whatever the fuck, right? It's like,
so what used to be the 2.0 standard is now the 2.1a standard. What was the 2.1 standard is now the 2.2a standard or something like that, and then there's the 2.2b standard. Like legitimately, like they just like condensed 3 versions into like versions of the 2 standard. I don't know. Yeah, and then I was reading about like other standards. All apparently like tech standards, tech specs are always like almost always like a hot mess when they're held like that.
Yeah, luckily we don't have any hardware to manage on top of all this fuckery. It's just software.
Can you imagine? Although it makes me wonder how the Unicode spec is handled so much cleaner than anything I've ever else out there.
They just add new ones, right? Like they have like a crazy range that they can add to, and they just keep making like, okay, well, number 420 is a smiley face with a dick and balls on its forehead or whatever.
Yeah, well, 420 would be just a plant. A nondescript, totally legal plant.
Oregano.
Yeah. Basil, oregano, those kinds of things. Yeah. A 4-leaf clover.
There you go.
Yeah, but that one seems to make the most sense. That's what but basically like I was thinking about, like, okay, so if we were gonna do our specs, right, for what version 1.0 of Squish looks like, or 1.2 or whatever, that'd be nice. Because the other thing I was thinking about too, this isn't super related, but somewhat tangentially related. One of the first things that we do is we have to get the version out of the game, out of the Squish version of the game, right?
From the game's metadata of what version it wants. Yeah.
But we do that with the latest version of Squish. So if we ever made a breaking change to how that works, we would never be able to get the game for older games. The Squish version for older games.
Yeah, I guess at the moment I've busted all of that using different versions of Squish, and at the moment it's just using that new version that I was working on that has the Squisher in it. So we'll kind of have to revisit the backwards compatibility stuff in the next couple months, I guess. But yeah, you know what's good? The way I'm thinking of it is still just if they depend on a version, we include that version, and we have a list somewhere of all the versions we support. And the only time that we would do something weird is when we stop supporting a version, and we would need to do something with it.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, or be like, hey, this game is old as fuck, and it uses old code, and click here to say you're okay with that. You know?
Yeah, like a warning or something.
Yeah, but I don't want to ever do that, because if you put in a Super Nintendo game today, it's not like, whoa, this shit's old as fuck, you know? It's just a Super Nintendo, which just works.
True, but
or an old PC game. If you start up an old PC game today from, Baldur's Gate or whatever, it's not just like, hey, buddy.
Windows is not like it. This is old as shit. No. I will say that it's a little bit different for us, though, because if somebody made a game that did have a security flaw and we weren't going to up their version because there might be breaking changes for that, we probably should let them know. Like, yo, this version got deprecated, specifically deprecated for a reason. Are you still okay with moving forward with this?
Yeah, I think it's at that point our responsibility to fix it. Because if you're using Squish today, Squish is just vanilla JS functions. It always will be. That's all it is. So then what possible world would we be living in where like they're just using the basics of our game engine, and we're on version 7 and we're like, oh yeah, we don't do that anymore. Like, yeah,
it's a little like if they change like the HTTPS spec for whatever reason to like how that works in Node, for example. Like if they like really changed it in a way that was breaking, then we would have to.
But that would be part of Node, and like the base version that we use that is included in the binary would be there, and the functions that we have are still just functions. And I don't think we're using anything that's not. It would be like a function that we call in the Node library, like the standard library, becomes deprecated, and then at that point, it's our responsibility to, like I said, release like a hotfix, or like not hotfix, but a patched version of that old shit. And then we can resolve, like I said, the deprecated stuff. And it's like, we don't have to warn you about anything. We went and we did this over here and fixed it for you.
Mm-hmm.
So, but then we would need a system to automatically find that shit and report it to me so we can do that. And that just sounds like another service, but we'll figure it out. It could just be a cron job at the start, whatever, because we don't have that problem yet. But.
Every 1 week, it just peeks in, see what's going on. Makes sense. Yeah. Okay. I mean, it makes sense. I didn't think of the full thing. I brought this up to Joseph, and then we were talking about it, and I was like, okay, let's move this conversation into the podcast, because we were just writing essays to each other via text message.
You were writing essays, and I responded wet. You were just like, we'll talk about this in the podcast.
Well, yeah, because when you write out an essay in text, it's like...
You feel like a loser.
Yeah, because I'm laying down on my couch writing an essay to Joseph via the garbage keyboard on your phone, which keeps auto-correcting crap. It's like, golly.
Well, yeah, you like to intentionally spell words wrong.
I do like to intentionally spell words wrong.
Must be hell for you.
Yeah, it kind of is. My phone's gonna assume Noon Thirsty is a time.
Noon Thirsty is like a cowboy rapper. I would definitely fuck with that dude's music. Anyway, did you have anything else before we go on to some 2022 stuff?
I not.
Okay. Oh, also in the Squish library, I changed the license from a GNU. I don't know anything about anything, but it was like a GNU license, and it was like, you can use this, you just have to maintain this copyright or this like notice of the license, and you need to be using the same license. Like, you need to also be on a GNU license if you want to be using Squish, which is actually not an intention of mine. I just want a thing that's like, hey, here's some stuff, use it if you want to. Please don't sue me. I'm not responsible for your shit.
Yeah,
it's just code. I'm just trying to make code available. Fuck off.
Yeah.
I don't care if you make money off of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think the MIT license is essentially that. So that's what I changed it to. Not a lawyer, but the little GitHub checkboxes, it was just like, someone can't use it, someone can't sell it, or whatever the fuck. And I was like, okay, sounds good.
Yeah. Oh, I see.
Yeah. Just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't realize there was a difference. For whatever reason, I just always assumed they were exactly the same and just carried on with my life, because I've never known what to pick on that.
I don't want someone to be like, oh, this is actually pretty useful, but I can't use it because of this license. I want to have a permissive license, and it seemed like that was the one. So if you're a lawyer and I'm wrong, hit me up. I don't know anything. Anyway, I have some list of goals for 2022. It's pretty high level, pretty optimistic.
Yeah. Is one of them rewrite the dashboard again?
Yeah, it's another redesign of the dashboard. That's it. That's my whole 2022.
Oh, no.
No, okay. So I just high level. I split it up into quarters. Q1, which I guess would be now to March, would be wiring up the publishing services, kind of getting everything that I've built up to this point rewired and reconfigured with all of our new shit that I've been working on. Like I said, fixing the binaries would be part of that. Making sure that people can publish and download and play games through the dashboard and stuff is very important in that. It's kind of critical to this whole shit. So, just making all of that stuff work again, and cleaning up code, making it kind of nice for Q2, which will be hopefully, sometime between March and June, like a V1 launch of this thing. Once we have it looking nice, and once we have it kind of working with all of our services, and it's not going down every other day, and it's not, fucking, anyway, if it's solid, then that's it. We have a thing we can like show people and say, hey, make a game for this and let us know what you think.
Yeah.
So that's the goal in my head for sometime before June. Obviously wishy-washy on these things, and shit happens and whatever, but that's the goal. At that point, it's just kind of me making games and kind of doing more, I would hope, creative stuff. This is goals for me, by the way. I mean, you can do whatever you want. Yeah, I want to make games. I like the the idea of doing creative stuff. And like I said before, I want to make games, but I always kind of just fall into some rabbit hole with the system and the core shit. So that's why once we kind of have the core shit launched, I can start working on other stuff. So, yeah, just exploring what the tools that we have can do and building hopefully interesting things, while making more, slight improvements. But really that's my goal for the rest of the year after that, is just making shit and hopefully being impressed by the shit I make.
Yeah.
And if not, running into limitations and fixing whatever those limitations are in the system, making it better.
Yeah, makes sense. I'm when you say in Q3 improvements, do you have anything in mind for that already, or is that more like once we launch, things that you come up as you are making your games?
Yeah, to me that's stuff that comes up. I imagine June 14th, I post on Reddit, and I get downvoted immediately. And someone posts a comment, it's like, fuck you. And I was like, okay, how can I improve, based on this feedback? But yeah, just from feedback from people or like our developer friends, or, like one of our friends invited me to a Tucson game developer club, and there's like over 100 people in it. So I think once I have something to show that group of people and get some good feedback from people who kind of know what they're talking about, which I also want people who don't know what they're talking about to give me feedback, because that stuff is valuable, Like, if you don't know how anything works, it doesn't mean that you don't know why it sucks. So anyway, yeah, just getting feedback, and then just whatever stuff I pick up on, like things that I'm not really quite happy with, like whether it's performance or the look of something or the feel of something, or the website or shit like that. Or for example, putting up our podcast downloads on the website is one thing I want to do, because I don't like having to force people to use services. Like I don't provide MP3s, but that's like, I understand it's very low priority, so that's why it's after the launch of what we need and stuff like that. But yeah, just improvements.
Makes sense. Yeah, I'm excited. Is the list that's on there? What is it called?
Exhaustive.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't think it has everything that I will want to do this year, but at a very high level, it's really.
Sorry, I went for the V1 launch specifically. But on there.
Oh, the V1 launch. Oh yeah, so the launch there is home games client. The next one is working/stable services. The other one is publishing, and the last one is HTTPS certs, which I guess could be included in the working/stable services. But yeah, I mean, that seems to be it. That's really the core of what this is, right? Someone can download a thing, they can play games, which is all this publishing shit, and the HTTPS certs is so you can have the features in your browser to make everything work the way it should. So yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. Obviously, I'm forgetting things, and there will be other stuff included in that list that I would want to have before we can say it's done. But yeah, that's it.
Nice. Yeah. Okay. Cool. I'm excited.
When we launch it, we need to do something. Like, I don't know what, but we need to do something. Like go to a Brazilian steakhouse or some shit. Like do something.
Go to the rage room.
There you go. Yeah, the rage room. But yeah, no. Anyway, I just think that will happen this year, because it's too close for me to do anything else. If that makes any sense.
No. What?
We're too close to this finish line, and there's so much shit that's like damn near ready.
Yeah.
That there's nothing else we can do this year except fucking get it out of the door. Like,
yeah.
We have this like we're just we're close. We're very close, and I'm excited. I'm excited for the full end-to-end thing to be ready and available and solid. Not just a demo, but like solid as fuck. So when we get that, I will be able to sleep at night.
Yeah, buddy. Nice. Yeah. I'm excited too. It should be a fun breakneck speed through Q2.
Yeah. And then did you have any goals or like specific things besides the TypeScript stuff that you have currently working on? I imagine you would want to make some more games or.
Yeah, I want to double back and finish Color Tag, and the Fastest Typer in the West game I think would be a good idea to do, and then maybe like the Twitter game, just because having like social media tie-ins, like that would be a good thing to have with the game.
That would be a good candidate for improvements, because you're right, I totally forgot about the like integration with social media stuff that I wanted to do. I need to kind of flesh out what that really looks like in implementation, so
Yeah, I think that should be one thing that we discuss. Maybe that doesn't even done this year, but it's done next year, or like just how long it takes us to build games, like make improvements in what we have before we go in and add more stuff to it.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. I'm realizing I'm not a very like goal written down goal driven person. I'm more like a heuristic kind of goal. I want home games to be better, and to me right now, it's like adding TypeScript, adding tests, adding. Making it more legible, having a README that actually explains what the functions that are exposed do, like what they take in, what they output, that kind of like why they're there. All that stuff I think is like important improvements to me right now. And then after that's done, maybe I'll see something else that needs to be done, or maybe I'll think, maybe take what I had done for a color tag. Honestly, one of the things that I think I want to do is take Square and redo Square with better knowledge now from what's going on, especially with like what you said about, I just hit a really high pitch note there, what you said about the view stuff on Square. Because before, when I had done Square, it was limited to the 100 to 100 thing. So I basically only had so much room to like move you up, like in Frogger, right? Like you bounce up to the top of the screen, and then I'm going to say more recent Froggers, but like I don't honestly know when the most recent Frogger came out. Like after Frogger like 3 or whatever, you like get up to the top of the screen, and then it's like more stuff for you to like hop through before you get to the finish line. Then you can have like longer courses. So it isn't just like faster things and maybe like more complex things. Like basically like some of the ideas that I had for a color tag, I could probably apply to Frogger as well. Not Frogger, sorry, Square as well.
Yeah.
So that's something I'm interested in doing too, just because I liked Square a lot, not just for the name, but also like it was the first game I made with this stuff, and I think I could make some really big improvements and make the game more fun, especially to like play with other people. So that maybe is something I want to do this year too. But I don't know. I haven't thought to write anything down. These are just
that's totally
goals
fine.
that I have had to improve stuff, and then also like, maybe Square updates would be pretty dope. And we could also see like how that works with the views and stuff like that, because the game is for the most part done, and just adding more not complexity, like more fun elements to it. But
yeah, that makes sense. And like as always, shit will change and our goals will adjust, but yeah, like what I was getting at with the we're too close. I can't pivot hard from anything because we're so close to this thing. I can't move. It's like we're hitting the finish line. It's just what we hit it with.
Yeah.
So anyway, it'll be cool. And my last question, I guess, on the goal stuff is: did you have any changes or adjustments or anything you'd want to make to the podcast or the format or the structure? Or?
Interesting. I think like making effort to try to do them in person and on Sundays regularly would be nice for me.
Yeah. I say less McDonald's. That was our thing when we did our last in person. I was like, hey, we do McDonald's before every episode and we're gonna die. We should try something else. And you were like, sounds good. And then this time you're like, hey, let's get McDonald's.
I have a very one-track brain. I can only think of so much stuff at once. Yeah, that's a good update. The file. We'd probably be more awake if we didn't eat Mickey D's right before podcasts. McDonald's gonna be like our first big sponsor.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm actually kind of a fan of the way that the podcast works currently. I think stripping out a lot of the like extra stuff that we were doing was a good move. I think moving them to in person, doing them every 2 weeks. I think those were like pretty good moves overall.
Yeah, I didn't have any like specific changes in mind. I agree. I like the way that we do it. I just didn't know if you had like a burning itch, where you were just like, man, I want to talk about movies every week or whatever.
I don't want you to have talk about movies every week, but I don't know. I mean, maybe adding in like a fun section at the end of some podcasts, but I think that should be on like a per basis, because I'm realizing with my current job that we're supposed to like bring up like a personal high and low, and that makes me feel like I need to do something cool every week, which is how you were feeling about the podcast before.
Yeah.
So it's like, I understand how Joseph was feeling.
Yeah, it was like you know, you got a whole life you're living and shit, and then you're just like, oh god, I gotta listen to new music to have something interesting to talk about, or like I need to go out and you know do a line of meth so I can have a cool story or some shit. You know, it's like I don't want to do that. I just want to talk about what I'm doing, and even just doing the home games work itself is like a job, you know. So it's I don't want to have to fucking ruin my life.
Yeah, it makes sense. I like that we like maybe when Spotify does its Wrapped again next year, we do another breakdown the top 5 or whatever Spotify gives us again. Yeah, and then maybe I'll think about maybe doing like fun sections, like maybe like more rapid fire questions or something like that. But not every week, not every episode, but like maybe like sprinkled occasionally.
Yeah, it's gotta be because you want to do the thing, not because you have a section for fun. Like the fun should come up. Like, no,
schedule fun.
Fun is mandatory.
Smiles are contractually required.
And I think the in-person stuff, I mean, it makes it easier to enjoy doing it because when you're doing it remote, it's like, welcome.
Because we do it at like 8 p.m. on Monday night or Tuesday night. So tired after work and stuff. So yeah, doing it in person on the weekends, I'll enjoy much more. It's more fun.
Definitely. And I'm not rushed to edit it where it's like 9:30 p.m.
No.
Shut the fuck up.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, that's pretty much all I had for this episode. Did you have anything else about how 2022 has been? About how your life has been these 2 days?
I fell down a mountain repeatedly, had a lot of fun doing it. That's how 2021 ended for me.
Nice. Yeah, well, 2021 is over. Thank God.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's going to do it for us for this episode. Thank you, everybody, for listening. As always, our music is done by our friend Tynan. He is Nitan on Bandcamp. That is Nitan, Nytan. You can find us on Twitter at HomeGamesIO. We also have a website, homegames.io. You can use the contact form at the bottom of the page on our website to send us a message or comments or feedback. Same thing on Twitter. Let us know whatever.
That's right.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week. Or 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Oh, you messed it up in the new year already.
Dude. An embarrassment.
Bye-bye.
Bye.